This video is going to demonstrate how to create a multiplicity photo, or a photo where you have the same person in multiple locations. First of all, before you start this, it is best to find a location where you can take pictures with you in different locations or spaces. Now you're going to need to have a steady shot for each of these pictures. I recommend using a tripod, and you can put your phone on a tripod to take the pictures. Or if you have a camera, you can use a camera. But you will need to set a timer or have somebody else take the pictures for you. Once you have taken the pictures of multiple shots of you in the same frame doing different things, you can open them up inside of a photo editing program like Photoshop or Photopea. In this case, I'm using Photopea.com, but the steps are pretty similar if you are using this or if you are using Photoshop. So I'm going to start by opening up these images. I'm going to choose File, Open, and I'm going to find these images that I have. And I have them stored inside of a folder called Multiplicity Photo Edit. If I click on them, I can preview them. If I press the space bar, I can see the different shots. These are the shots that I want to include. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Open. Now looking at this, it's opened an image, but I need to now put in more pictures. So let's say this is going to be my background image. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but it's the first picture I put in. I'm now going to choose Open and Place. And I'm going to put in the other ones. Now this one is 0944, so I'm going to put in the rest of these. I'm going to choose Open. And you can see it puts me in the different locations. So what I want to do now is look at the different ones, one at a time, and see how they relate to it. Now, as I look at this, here's the bottom one right here. If I click on any of the other ones, you're going to notice that the camera jumps. The reason this is I decided to take this last picture after I'd already moved the camera, so I put the camera back on the tripod, but that made it so it's harder to see, or so it shifted where the camera was. So what I want to do is I'm actually going to change this one from the background, and I'm going to call it Move, because that's going to tell me I need to move it so it lines up with everything. I'm also going to put this up higher at the top. This bottom image, I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to have to turn this one off. I'm actually going to find one. I like this as my back image. So I'm going to go ahead and move this underneath. This is my background image. What I want to do now is I want to put all the other images on it and mask out everything except for where the person is sitting. So I'm going to go up to the next one, and you can see over here I have the person standing and yelling or pointing, and over here it looks different. I want to keep this person but mask everything else out. I'm going to make sure I select that layer. You can use different selection tools. You can try using the magic wand. The quick selection tool works great in Photoshop. I have noticed sometimes in Photopea it doesn't always work how you hope. I'm going to try first with the magic wand, and you can see it selects way too much. I'm going to zoom in to make this a little bit easier. And I'm going to press Alt or Option on the keyboard so I can deselect this area. And I'm trying to select the whole person. It doesn't do that great of a job selecting, so I'm going to deselect by pressing Command D. And I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to use the lasso tool. Let me zoom in a little bit more. And with the lasso tool, I'm just going to draw. And I'm not worrying too much about the fine details, but I'm just going to draw around the shape that I want to keep. And there you can see there's the image. Now I'm going to go in and add a mask. Let me go back to full screen mode so you can see it better. I'm going to add a mask by clicking on this icon, and you can see it kind of has erased everything in between. You can see this. You can still see there's a little bit of differentiation because of the shadow and the lighting's changed, but you can see a little bit. If you can't, I'm going to zoom in. You can see it a little bit clearer here. So what I want to do to fix that, because I've created a mask, I can select on the mask, which is the black and white. I can now click on my brush, and if I notice, black is going to erase, so I have my brush selected, and black is the color. I'm going to make my brush size bigger, and I can kind of come in and clean up that space. Now my brush is set to a hard edge. I'm going to set it to a soft edge. That kind of smoothens out, so it's not quite a harsh edge. If I mess up, like right there, I got too much of the shoulder, I can switch the colors and I can bring it right back. And so the goal is to make it not look like there's this difference because of the shadow. If I press X on the keyboard, it'll actually switch my foreground and background, and I can come in and I can do the same thing here to get rid of that extra or the contrasting in the light between one image and the other. And this works best if you have your brush set with a soft edge, so you want your hardness set to low, and then you just kind of come in and you brush around, and you can get rid of the locations that you don't want. So now I have the two images in here. I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the images. So I'm going to turn on this image, and I'm going to just quickly grab the lasso tool. And I want to give it a little bit of space around here. So I have my lasso tool taken care of. I'm going to make sure I'm on the correct layer. I hit on the mask, and you can see there is another person in there. I could do the same thing where I fix the mask. I'm going to add in the other layers first and then go back and fix all of the masks. Now this top one up here, it says move. If you notice when I turn it on, it looks like everything jumps, and it kind of does. I'm going to turn everything off, except my bottom or background layer. I'm going to turn my move layer back on, but I'm going to line up this with the other layer. To do that, I'm going to change the opacity. I'm going to drop it down so you kind of see both things. Now the area that I want to focus on is the doors, because this is where I'm going to be combining this part of the photos from the doors. So I'm going to go up to my move tool, make sure I'm selected on the right layer, the one called move, and I'm dragging this over so I can match the doors up pretty close. And so again, this is because I decided to take an additional picture after I had taken the camera off of the tripod. And it may not match up the entire photo, but I want to make sure it's pretty close at where the door is, because this part will be kept in. So now that I have that, I'm going to change my opacity back to full. I can now use the selection tool, and I can select this portion that I want to keep. And I go in and I turn a mask on like I did everywhere else. I turn on all the other layers. Now I can start going through and cleaning up. You can see this one kind of cuts out part of the head. This one cuts out part of this person. And you can see this glow around the different images. So to fix that, I'm just going to select the different layers, starting with this one. I make sure that I'm selected on the mask. I go to my brush, and I can start painting. Remember, black. And it's not quite black. Let me make sure that it's fully black. Black will kind of erase what's there. White will reveal. So I'm going to switch that back to white. And so what I want to do is go around the edges, and I want to erase them. So I'm going to switch this back to black. And I just have to make sure I'm selected on that layer. I'm going to make this a little bit less harsh. If you press X on the keyboard, you can switch between black and white rather quickly. I'm just going to bring this back. And then I'm going to go to the next layer, which is this one. So I'm getting rid of the excess around this. Notice how I cut off too much, so I press X, which changes the color right here between my foreground and my background. And then I press it again. And I keep going back and forth by pressing X just to make sure I get it right. Make sure you're selected on the mask. And I'm just going to kind of come in here. If it still is too glaring of a difference, I can just come up here to my brush, and I can soften the brush, and it'll soften the difference in here. So I'm going to go ahead and soften each of these. So now I can just come in. I'm just going to do a little touching up here just to make it look more accurate. So now in just a couple of minutes, I have taken and I've combined multiple photos to appear together. Now, if you really want to go above and beyond, you can change the different colors of the people in this image. Over here, you can see I've changed a couple of colors of the shirts. I've added an image. And so I'm just going to show you briefly how to do that if you would like to explore how to change the different colors. Now, there's many different ways you can do this. I'm just going to show you one way, and you can try other ways and see what works. So for this, I'm going to change the different colors. Let me start with this one back here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to grab the selection tool. This time I'm going to try the quick selection tool because I am going to be selecting a color that's pretty close to each other, the color blue. I click and make sure I'm on the image, not on the mask. And I'm going to click and drag. This one selects a little better. It does a much better job in Photoshop. So if you do have Photoshop, I recommend that. If you don't have Photoshop, Photopea is a great option for exploring how this works. If you press Alt, it will subtract from the selection. If you just click and drag, it will add to the selection. Again, I'm just trying to select the shirt. Okay, so I have this selection. What I want to do now is I want to come down to the half circle. It says new adjustment layer. Half of the circle's filled in, half of it's not. And I'm going to come up here to hue and saturation. And what I want to do is click on colorize. And here you can see I can change the color of this image. I can change the saturation of it, how much color is there. I can change the lightness of it. I'm just going to keep it like that for right now. Now, if my selection was better, it wouldn't have it on the hands. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I zoom out, you can see the image has changed. If I want to change the color more, I can choose a different color. And I can increase the saturation. So that will allow me to add in different colors. Now let's say that you want to add in an image. If you notice in my example here, I have an image on the shirt, this image of a raccoon. If you want to add in an image, File, Open and Place. I have the image downloaded. There it is. I'm going to drag it and click on a corner and resize it so it looks like it's about the size to fit on the back. And I just put it where I want it. I'm going to rotate it. And then I hit the check mark or return on the keyboard. Let me go back to full screen. It doesn't quite look right. It looks like it's just pressed on there. I can go up to Edit, Transform, and I can try a couple of different transform options. I like to do Warp. It lets you warp something around an object. So I'm going to try to warp this a little bit so it looks like it's more on a back, which is not a perfectly flat surface. And then when I'm done, I hit the check mark. It still doesn't quite look right. I'm going to move it over and up, just like that. Now, if I look at it closer, you can see there's wrinkles in the shirt, but there's not wrinkles in the image. So I'm going to go over here to this image layer. I'm going to change how the layer is viewed, and I'm just going to explore different things. If I explore darken, you can kind of see it shows some of the ripples through there of the shirt. You can see if you try different settings, it's going to show you different ways. So I want you to explore how to do this. After you have finished putting all of the pictures of the same person in a single image, start experimenting with changing colors. See if you can change the colors of the person's shirt to make it look different throughout. So your finished product should look something like this. If you get ambitious, you could have something like this. The goal is that you can take pictures on your own and you can turn this into your own project where there are multiple pictures of the same person in one location.